to talk about the Alabama-Arkansas game. Coming into this game, I said that this was a must win. This was a cannot lose for Alabama, as it relates to the morale for the team, as it relates to seeding for the NCAA tournament, as it related to seeding for the SEC tournament. There was just a lot of things at stake for this game. Alabama does end up winning the game. However, they didn't lead until overtime. Thankfully, the only score that matters is the score at the end of the game, and that score, Alabama won 92-88. Alabama did a really good job cleaning up things that were issues at the beginning of the game. Alabama at the very beginning of the game went 7. When they had 7 field goals, they also had 7 turnovers. We've talked at length about how turnovers have been a major issue for this team, especially in losses, but especially really on the road. It had not been a major issue at home. Well, Alabama has 7 turnovers and 7 field goals. They finished the game with just 11 turnovers. That includes overtime as well. So Alabama does a much better job taking care of the ball. Alabama does a much better job of, making those in-game adjustments at pressures or at slowing down. And honestly, just having individual players know that, hey, you don't have to do too much. Part of that was Aaron Estrada. He did not have his best game. He ends up going 4 for 9 from 2, 0 of 5 from 3. He has 5 turnovers. It felt like he was pressing a little more. It felt like he, was worried about the game and was worried, hey, I need to do more. I need to do more. I need to do more. He's the only senior that has no eligibility left. They honored 7 seniors at senior night. Aaron is the only one out of the group, I believe 6. Either way, he's the only one out of the group without any eligibility left. So that is something where I'm sure that does play into that a little more. But Aaron Estrada, just didn't have his most efficient game. We've seen him have some super efficient games, 8 of 11 from 2, he had a double-double. He's been really, really good. So that's no cause for concern. It's just one that it's really good to see Nate Oates, stepping in, talking through what some of the issues were and, not letting the turnovers become a major issue as they cleaned it up going into the rest of the first half as well as the second half and then in overtime. The other big thing for me was Latrell Wrightsell was fully back. We talked about him playing a little bit in that Florida game on the road. And then in this game, he ends up playing 39 minutes and has one of the best games on the team. He goes 4 for 4 from 2, 4 for 8 from 3, and just is the Latrell Wrightsell we know and love. He has 20 points, and Alabama improves to 9-0 when he scores 10 points. He really feels like the piece that was missing during the stretch run. Nate Oates' comments after the game was Alabama wins an SEC title if Latrell doesn't go down. I don't know that I would go quite that far because you still have to win the games and going on the road and with some of the losses we had. I don't know if he makes up every single one of those, but I will say his consistency from shooting, his efficiency on the floor, he went a whole season without missing a free throw, a whole regular season without missing a free throw, and just his reliability, and he doesn't turn over the ball. He does a really good job with his assist to turnover ratio. He is just one of the stalwarts of this team. And so I do understand where Nate's coming from when he makes those comments. He ends up playing 39 minutes in this game and has, per KenPom, the number 1 offensive rating on the team. So, that is how Latrell is able to impact this game. It was huge because Rylan Griffin did not play. Rylan Griffin went down in that Florida game in the second half. They talked about there was going to be an MRI post that game. Nate Oates' comments were that the MRI was better than expected, but he still was going to be missing this Arkansas game. By the sounds of it, he has a chance to play in the first round matchup for the SEC tournament. It's going to be happening on Friday. We will talk a little bit about who that potential matchup will be coming up a little bit later in the show. But it sounds like Rylan Griffin's injury was not as severe as initially potentially thought by the training staff. So that is good news, because backcourt depth is something that we have struggled with, especially with Latrell going down and then Rylan going down, last game. The other big thing for me that cannot go overstated is how well Nick Pringle and Grant Nelson played in this game. Nick Pringle was my player to watch for the game. I thought with his energy and intensity that he could bring, it would be able to potentially get the guys up for what was going to be a difficult start. They did not start how we would have hoped. It felt like an 11 a.m. tip that was on spring break, like it was. The spring break started, for anybody unaware, for the university last Friday, and you could tell that this was the first Saturday of spring break. The energy and intensity for the start of this game was not what you would want. It was not at the level that you would desire for it to be. And that really showed on the court. The reason I picked Nick Pringle as my player to watch is I knew him being the hype and the, glue guy and the bench guy that he is, that I knew that there was a chance that he could help bring that energy and intensity up. He did a good job. He played 35 minutes. He ends up going 6 of 10 at the line, so not the best, but definitely not terrible. He ends up getting 10 rebounds, 3 assists, 2 blocks, 2 steals, only has 2 fouls in those 35 minutes. Thought he played a really good game. Nick Pringle did what you wanted him to do down low and was the lob threat at times when you needed him. He catches a lob in overtime to help ice the game, and just overall played a good game. 2 blocks and 10 rebounds in 35 minutes of action out of Nick Pringle is phenomenal. If you can get that type of effort, intensity, and rebounding out of him every game, you got to be happy with where your chances are moving forward. The other guy that you have to talk about when you talk about this game is Grant Nelson. Grant Nelson only plays 31 minutes, but that's because he had 4 fouls. But Grant Nelson had 4 fouls with 6 minutes to go in the fourth quarter. Second half. And so it really felt like Grant Nelson was going to foul out of his 7th game this season. We had seen this script here recently. It happened in the Florida game. It happened in some others where coming down the stretch, Alabama had to play without Grant Nelson. This game, he did a good job. When he had 4, he just didn't foul. There were some times that he had to give up a bucket because he couldn't defend quite at the level that he maybe wanted to not get that 5th foul. But he played for 11 minutes at the end of this game with 4 fouls, and it was huge because Alabama needed every minute of it. Grant Nelson hits a big 3, cutting the lead to 3 in the regulation. He ends up getting 13 rebounds, has 3 blocks, just 1 turnover, 2 steals. So Grant Nelson has a really good game, has 14 points, 5 of 7 from the field. From 2. So he has a really good game, and it's a situation where Grant's ability to defend without fouling for that 11-minute stretch of the game, it was from about 6 under in regulation, and then the 5-minute overtime period was massive. It was absolutely huge to see Grant be able to defend the game, finish it out without fouling, and then hit a big 3 to cut the lead to 3 right before Latrell Wrightsell hits the 3 that eventually sends it to overtime. The other thing I want to talk about in this is the number of 3s Alabama hit officially is 9 of 30. Unofficially should be around 13 of 34. Because there are 3 or 4 threes that happened in this game that Alabama had a toe on the line. Nate Oates talked earlier in the season about that's like the worst shot that Alabama wants to take, because obviously they don't like the mid-range, but your toe on the line definitely is kind of the worst of both worlds. You get the shooting percentage from 3, but you get the points from a long 2. And it's something that you don't really want to see. This is really one of the only games this year that has been a major issue and potentially could have cost Alabama the game. It does not end up costing them the game, but it's just something to keep an eye on. Latrell Wrightsell's kind of one of the only guys this season that Nate had talked about that has an issue with that compared to others, because he's one of the main shooters that had played in a different system, so he was a little bit closer to the line. Just something worth mentioning. I don't think it's an issue. I don't think it's something we should worry about. Just kind of a talking point for this game that Alabama hit 4 twos that were toes on the line 3s. So Alabama's shooting percentage, they end up shooting 30% from 3. So not their best shooting night, but definitely not their worst either. That percentage really and realistic is a tiny bit higher than that for how well they shot. They just didn't get rewarded with it because their feet were on the line. So Alabama does need to keep that in mind, when playing some of these teams. The other thing, and one of the last things I wanted to mention for this is Alabama did have more free throws shot by Arkansas. Arkansas did a good job getting to the line like I expected. They shot 27 free throws, but Alabama ends up getting to the line 25 times. So Alabama does not get outshot from the free throw line quite to the level that Arkansas had been outshooting other teams. The issue that came with Alabama when it came to free throw shooting is Alabama only makes 17 where Arkansas made 24. Part of that is in due to the fact, I talked earlier about Nick Pringle going 6 of 10 for the line. Nick Pringle playing 25 minutes, he ends up shooting more free throws and getting to the line much more than he typically does. So 10 free throws out of probably your worst free throw shooter on the team definitely will cause your percentage to not be at the same level it has been in games past. So I wouldn't really look at that. I wouldn't look at the free throw percentage number as cause for concern. Mark uncharacteristically did miss a couple. He goes 5 of 7 for the line. Grant goes 1 of 2. Sam goes 1 of 2. Those numbers are not things that I think should be cause for concern. I just want to point it out that Alabama did a good job getting to the line the number of times that they did and did not let Arkansas shoot substantially more free throws than Alabama did. And then Alabama just didn't do quite as good a job converting at the line. Definitely not something that you want to see, but I don't think it's a long-term issue or something we should worry about moving forward. Just felt like it was a stat in the game that was worth mentioning as it did happen. And in a tight game like this, where a three-pointer with 22 seconds to go from Latrell ends up sending it to overtime, these are the kinds of things where if Alabama doesn't hit that three or doesn't win this game, they absolutely would be talking points. So I just want to mention them just so that everyone is aware, hey, this is a point that happened. This is something that we should maybe talk about or think about. But, we shouldn't dig too deep into it. Alabama won the game at the end of the day. And no matter it's 1 point, 4 points, 24 points, a win is a win, and that's all that matters. So I think that it's a big win to get going and get you more prepared for the SEC tournament. You secure a 3 seed in the upcoming SEC tournament. And as I mentioned, we will talk a little bit more about that here coming up very, very shortly.